Hello, fellow golfers. This is Paul from Senior to Scratch. I have a real treat for you, an interview with Scott Fawcett. We just had a chance encounter at a random golf course in Dallas, Texas. The first time that I've actually been to Dallas, and so happened to meet Scott, and he was very gracious in donating some of his time to be interviewed by me. So please enjoy the following content. Well, hi, Scott. Welcome to the show. It's really an honor to have you on the program today.
Absolutely. It's kind of crazy running into you at the tribute a couple weeks ago. It's funny because like obviously I'm golf famous, so like famous in the smallest subset of the world, but I always think that it's got to be strange when you like run across and you're like, that's the guy who's I'm a member of his app. So it happens rarely, but when it does, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was really such a lucky moment that I even got to meet you in person. I was in Dallas for the very first time for a conference. And so the day before it started, someone arranged a golf round at the tribute, and I noticed it was 36 holes. As we pulled into the clubhouse, I saw an event with PGA North Texas flags everywhere. And so then I was on the driving range, and like something in my gut just told me, well, why don't you just look down the driving range and maybe Scott's there. I know Scott's from Dallas, and there, sure enough, 10 spots to my right, there you are playing in that pro guest tournament. So
It's
yeah, it
it's
was
pretty
pretty crazy.
recognizable swing. Nobody else swings the golf club as short as I do now.
No, actually, like, so one of my questions, like when I first saw you, like the reason I kind of picked you out there is like you're a big, strong dude, right? So for someone in their 50s like myself, so I know you've got a golfing and athletic background and pedigree, but could you share a little bit about your workout routine and how you stay injury free as you get older?
Yeah, honestly, it's not a golf specific routine. Every time I try to do one of those, I kind of get bored. I've had some blood pressure issues over the last 4 to 8 years as I get older. And unfortunately, after having COVID, my blood pressure got really bad. And so I've just honestly, I've worked my way into this deal where I just kind of go to the gym for about an hour and a half or 2 hours every day. Like I'm not in there trying to get in and out super quick. I'm just kind of meandering around. So it really probably resembles the workout of a linebacker more than a golfer. It is funny though. Actually, I do DEXA scans and blood work every 6 months, and I decided in April that I was really going to try to work on my game. And there's only so much time in the day between having 11 and 15-year-old girls, a wife, an ex-wife, two different companies to run, and I decided to stop working out altogether. I was like, I'm just going to take all my free time because I did think that it was kind of a detriment. I mean, I'm 6'1" and 230. Like you say, I'm a pretty big dude, and I did a DEXA scan actually about 3 weeks ago, and I lost 10 pounds of muscle and put on 10 pounds of fat, which is way more than I thought would happen in 4 or 5 months to just play golf through the summertime. So I was just looking back at my DEXA scans. I'm like, oh my God, that was a year and a half worth of work I just let go away. That honestly, at this point, as you get older, I'm not even sure if I'll be able to get that back or just try to maintain the new size.
Yeah, it really is tough to build up muscle, and it's so easy to lose it, right? Just like the golf score getting better, right? It's
Exactly right.
good analogy. Yeah, no, I mean, 1 to 2 hours, you said you were in the gym?
Yeah, I mean, again, like honestly, I would just go in there and kind of just listen to stand-up comedy, just and so I wouldn't say every day, but probably 4 to 5 days a week on average would just be in there for at least an hour and a half and probably closer to 2 hours,
Wow.
depending on. But like I say, it is lat pull downs, bench press, rows, like everything, nothing that would be theoretically golf specific. And I really, again, I need to do more yoga and stuff like that. It's just so boring. It's just I'm trying my hardest, but like, and the yoga classes we've got here, the majority of them are hot yoga. And as we were discussing before we started, with my blood pressure, the if I spend too much time in heat, like I just get lightheaded really quickly. Last yoga class that I tried, I literally just wound up laying there. I wound up being in the front row, so I just wound up kind of laying there and doing my own deal for about 45 minutes because I was like, if I keep this up, I was already lightheaded like 10 or 15 minutes into the session. So trying to do a bunch
Yeah.
of body weight exercises with fit 130 pound women is not a good idea when you've got 100 pounds on them.
Oh man. Yeah, I used to do yoga back when I was a member of the Y. I don't really do that anymore, but I did sign up for the one of these golf fitness apps.
Yeah.
So
Which one?
it's So I was a member of this Fit for Golf. I just let that lapse, and now I'm trying another one. What's his name? Jamie Grieve or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I find that's pretty good. Like there's a lot. It's a lot more targeted, I think. Like the Fit for Golf, I think had so many exercises I didn't know which ones to do. So yeah.
Sounds like the decade app version of fitness. There's just a lot of people get in there and like, wow, there's a lot of content and stuff to learn here in decades. So it can
Oh
get
yeah,
overwhelming for sure when
it's
you
gold. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
well, it's
gold.
funny for me because like I get, that's the main criticism I get is just, man, there's just so much. Where do I feel like that's also saying, tell me your weaknesses. I've worked too hard. Like I'm not trying to do that. Like that is the main complaint I get. And it's like, yeah, I actually agree with you. But for me as the guy that designed it, like I know where everything is because I
Yeah,
designed it. And so
right.
it seems very intuitive to me, and it potentially just needs to be a little bit more intuitive.
Yeah, yeah. So, along those fitness lines, I'm wondering if you've got any nutritional advice. Do you follow any programs or?
I don't. And it's funny because people ask me all the time, they're like, wow, you must work out a lot to be, again, 230. And I'm like, that's just eating. I mean, again, that is just most people. And it's funny, as a guy who I don't have a problem eating as much as you possibly want to put in me. And so I think that that all comes down to just food. And again, I think this is where it's so interesting because like diet advice, I mean, the best diet advice is very straightforward. A bunch of lean meats, healthy fats, vegetables, but nobody's going to do that full time and for years on end. So like trying to do that as much as you can, 80-ish% of the time. I think the number one thing for people that are trying to lose weight is just don't drink calories. I mean, obviously alcohol's got calories. Most of us drink a little bit of alcohol here and there, but aside from that, you just cannot drink calories. Again, I just look at like when I see people that are pretty overweight, 300 pounds and higher, I'm like, I refuse to believe you eat more food than I do. I mean, again, I just simply refuse to believe that's possible. Um, you just have to be drinking calories and punting that, especially since the majority of that's going to be sugary calories. That's to me the key. And again, between like a carnivore or anything else like that, I'm pretty agnostic.
Right. Yeah, I thought maybe you were a carnivore, but who knows?
I'd like
Yeah,
to be. I mean, I do believe it would help me. I do believe that that's probably carnivore plus fruits and vegetables is probably the
yeah,
optimal human diet. I just like junk food too. I mean, so
yeah,
I
me
try
too.
my hardest whenever I eat junk food to make sure I do eat a lot of protein with it.
Right.
Um, and I've gotten better about just not having sweets in the house and just snacking away on sweets. It's just amazing how quickly you can burn. You just grab a few Oreos and it's one thing, but once you get like a small pack of Oreos where it tells you there's
Yeah.
350 calories in this small pack, and you're like, I probably eat twice that when I'm just grabbing them from the bigger box. And it's just, man, I mean, it's hard to have fun eating junk whenever you look at it. And it's like that is a ton of. We go get these crumble cookies in Cookie Society all the time, and I had never noticed that crumble cookies has the calories on it, and it's like 720, and it's like, oh
Well,
my
the
God,
other
that's
thing, like where you live, man, do we eat well? Barbecue joints everywhere,
yeah.
Papados if you want Cajun. Like, man, it's great eating there. So you got to really temper yourself, right?
Well, and Dallas is like, I mean, it has to be the restaurant capital of the world. I mean, there are so many restaurants here. It's ridiculous. Like when I go to other cities, I get frustrated because I'm like, there should just be restaurants on every single corner, and there
Right.
just aren't.
Yeah, no, right on. Well, no, thanks for that. Yeah, talk on fitness and nutrition. Now let's get on to the name of the game here. So I have to say I'm super impressed with your decade golf system. The course management aspects are crucial. The teaching videos are world class. It's really one thing that surprised me was getting these suggested videos based on how my game is trending. I'm like, well, how the hell do you know that my putting sucks? Like, so
We
so
like to call it, we've got AI in there, but it's like, it's just pretty much based on your stats.
yeah, so I don't think I really knew where my deficiencies were until I saw all the stats associated with my game. So maybe you could start by explaining for the listeners what the decade system is, what it's all about, really.
Sure. So I, played professional golf through my 20s. Again, because I played most sports through high school. I didn't even really specialize in golf until I got to college. And then I had a couple different injuries through college that made me take almost 2.5 years of my playing time off. So by the time I graduated, like I've always hit the ball really far, and then I feel like I've always felt like we all do, like I'm better than my scores indicate. And it really is funny looking back at it all now because I would be my prototypical player I would want to work with now. Somebody who hits it far and simply doesn't have a clue what they're doing from a strategic standpoint. Because historically, again, playing lessons, not to just come out bashing old cliches and stuff, but like when someone says, this is a little bit more difficult shot, let's go more towards the middle of the green here. What is that based on? I mean, again, unless you played on tour quite successfully, you're just kind of making it up also as an assistant pro or whatever. And so the game has just been taught very poorly. And again, I'm not saying that's a negative on instructors at all. It's the only sport in the world that's not taught on the field of competition. So Decade utilized all of the strokes gained statistics in conjunction with Chris Como was one of my best friends, and I just took all of his TrackMan data from the players he'd worked with back in 2013 and 14 to kind of not to get too mathy, but the standard deviations of directional and distance control of your shot pattern. And then if I know how many strokes it takes to hole out from any given area on the golf course, you can pretty much solve strategy fairly easily. And that's Mark Brody, the guy who came up with stroke gain, is far smarter than I am. But the obvious use of data in statistics is to find your deficiencies. And I, as a player, the obvious use of the data to me was to figure out how to play the game. And so it's just we're coming at this solution from two different, or basically going after two different solutions using the same data set, based on our experiences. So did all that kind of back in 2013 and 14. And then Will Zalatoris was just a junior at my home course here in Dallas. I caddied for him when he won the Texas Amateur and US Junior, putting all this stuff kind of into play for the first time. And so what it is, it's really just a math-based strategy system. And I think that sounds scarier than it is. 7 - 2 is pretty much the most advanced math you'll have to know in order to work the system. But it really just takes that mystical part of the game that used to be like, well, I don't know what the heck to do here. I mean, and again, removing the emotion from decision making, just all those things that I don't even think I would have really realized if I had just played and tried to use the system myself instead of caddying for Will. I'm pretty sure I would have screwed it up completely by the turn the first day. But just because I was caddying for Will, obviously I was invested in his outcome, but not as much as I would have been if it were me. And so just really running the system, the algorithm, if you will, over and over and over again. And, just watching him he won the Texas Am by 4 shots. He had never won more in a high school golf tournament at the time. And it was just so simple. And that's, again, I started like, man, that was weird. That was just really, really simple. At the time, he'd never beaten me. Like in a round of golf, we'd played God knows how many times. And so theoretically, heavy on the theoretically, I would have beat him in the Texas Am, which there's probably no chance I actually would have. And so it was just amazing to watch this kid just overnight just get better. And again, this is my canned joke, but if you feel like you should have shot lower every time you play, you are either not as good as you think you are, or you made mental and strategic mistakes. And that's what Decade addresses, is those mental and strategic mistakes. And over the last 5 years, it's gotten heavier on the mental side than even the strategic side. I mean, I could teach you strategy in 30 minutes probably, but the discipline and patience to put it into play, that's the hard part. And so honestly, at this point, like trying to use my own game, not intentionally as a showcase, because God knows I can shoot a bad score with anyone, but like I don't play or practice much more than anyone else. And I'm 51, and I've been this summer's been crazy. The last 3 months, how many low rounds I've shot by just finally getting really good at just accepting. And again, I say accepting because it's I've started hitting my irons really short. My swing is short. I have no forward shaft lean, and it's been in my head because I still just play with 25-year-old playing professionals all the time, and they're hitting 2 and 3 clubs less than me sometimes. And it literally just was in my head until I finally in July just said, "All right, dude, you're 51. Just accept it, and just bunch your 8 iron out there, 150, 145. I mean, if it's 145 right now, if I'm 145." I could maybe stand on a 9 iron, but I'm probably just gonna, bunt flare a little 8 iron out there. And once you're kind of just doing that and doing the same thing over and over again, I'm not gonna say it's that difficult because it's a very difficult game, but based on your ability, not shooting your worst 30 percentile of scores is not hard to do. Avoiding those bad rounds and the good rounds will still just kind of be there. And let me just tie a bow on that because in trying to look back at whenever I was playing professionally, my buddies and I used to go, to dinner every night after shooting our whatever we shot and just laugh at all the dumb stuff we did that day. Oh, you won't believe what I did on six, and like never the good stuff. And I think looking back at it, that I felt like those mistakes are going to stop happening by getting mechanically better. And at the end of the day, you can only get so good at ball striking in this game. Like even Scotty Scheffler, who's obviously on a heater, he still misses greens. But once you're playing correctly, it's just far easier to not make bogey than it is to make birdie. And that's really the foundation of Decade.
No, that's an excellent summary of it, Scott. So I play with a lot of double-digit handicappers. Their left to right dispersion could be wider than a football field sometimes. So how do you think the decade system can help golfers like that really that struggle with their consistency and confidence in their swings and maybe don't have a good handle on what their target should be?
Well, it's acceptance for first and foremost. It's acceptance that your shot pattern is huge, and let's when we get in trouble, get it back in play. Because again, I agree, those guys' shot patterns are pretty big, but simply understanding how the best players in the world are viewing the game, it can't make you worse. I mean, my analogy for this is, as I said earlier, I've been having some blood pressure issues and whatnot. Used to, I was a 36 handicap cardiologist about 5 years ago. I mean, hey, I know what blood pressure is, and that's about it. But after having COVID twice, a bunch of appointments with cardiologists, whatever, like I feel very confident I could prescribe the correct blood pressure medicine. I could give you the right diet advice and exercise advice. Now, you still wouldn't want me to grab a scalpel and try to do heart surgery on you, but I've gone from a 36 to probably a 2 handicap cardiologist. Now, those last 8 shots between a guy who's a decent cardiologist and can actually operate on you that gulf is a mile wide. But that's what Decade's trying to do, is trying to get a tour player's brain into that 16 handicap, into that 5 handicap. Again, the idea is Raymond Floyd actually has a great quote in the inside jacket of his book, The Art of Scoring, that says, even if you gave me and you the exact same skills, so just give me your skills, I'm still going to beat you 99 times out of 100 just by understanding how to play the game.
Mm.
And that sounds like hyperbole. That statement is extraordinarily true. So the idea is if I caddied for you, you would shoot lower basically 100% of the time you played golf and than you would just on your own. And so what we're trying to do is basically get my golf brain inside of you as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Oh, that's such a game changer. So, for those who aren't into deep analytics but want to track something simple to guide their improvement, what stats do you think they should focus on?
Well, so it's actually good timing for that question. We just finally released our new Tiger 5 data entry interface last week. And you might have seen Smiley Kaufman and some other people on social media recently talking about these 5 things that Tiger tracked. I'm actually the guy that brought those to light from Tiger. Smiley says some tour players like, no, Smiley, it was me at TPC San Antonio about 7 years ago telling you about these 5 things. And so what they are is how many bogeys on par fives, how many double bogeys, how many 3 putts. Tiger tracked bogey with 9 iron or less in order to quantify the data. We tracked inside 150. And then Tiger tracked blown easy saves, which is obviously subjective to his opinion. So we track 2 chips per round. And really, if you think back to your last round of golf and you think I should have shot lower, if it's not one of those 5 things, you're kidding yourself. I
Hmm.
mean, again, this is where Tiger pre-shot link, pre-everything figured this out. And what's crazy is it's not no double bogeys, it's not no bogeys on par fives, it's not too many. And so again, back to the mental side of the game, it, when you make that bogey on a par five, like sure, if we've bogeyed 2 par fives today, like that's not good. But I mean, again, depending on your handicap, blah 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 blah. But um when you bogey, when you're like, well, there's one of my X points, and Tiger literally was trying to have 6 of those events per round,
per round.
and excuse me,
No,
per
per
tournament,
event. Yeah.
per tournament to win on the PGA Tour. Like that's he said, if I can do these things 6 times or less, I will win on the PGA Tour, and that number is actually spot on, which is again incredible that he figured that out. And so, like me personally, when I played in Champions Tour Q School last year, I mean, I finished 21st with them taking 18 and 2 alternates. So I didn't play well, but also, I mean, I played like a plus handicap of some degree. And I think I had like 3 or 3.5 of those per round.
Hmm.
And it's just like,
Holy
again,
cow.
I had not played much golf in the prior 5 months because of a torn muscle in my calf. But like, those are the things like coming into Champions Tour Q School a month from today. Those are the things I'm focusing on cleaning up personally.
So
Not
you were
I've got to
only
figure
one
it.
spot out
What's
of
that?
you're only one spot out of
Well,
getting your
yeah, but
card.
that sounds closer than it actually is. The way Champions Tour Q School works is it's not good.
Oh, sorry,
It's
I didn't mean to cut you off. It was yeah, I didn't realize you were that close.
Yeah, but again, it sounds closer than it actually was. Again, I'm really curious to see how I do. I'm actually going to have to get a cortisone shot in my hip and knee today because they're not doing very well. But I've been playing so good. I mean, again, I just released a video last week with Garrett Clark from Good Good Golf where I shot 65. And if you actually just go watch that video, you'll see a decade clinic in action. But I hit every single green, shot 7 under, and it was just like that's how you do it. Yeah, again, driving the ball well is the most important thing you can do in this game. And that's I mean, again, because you're just taking away half the golf course. People say, well, putting is because it's half the shots. Like, first of all, no, it's not. But um, like the only putts that really matter, and again, I'm saying all this is broad strokes, so don't hold me to it, but like kind of everyone from inside 5 feet makes the amount of putts they should relative to their handicap. Kind of from outside 20 feet, everyone kind of two putts the amount they should make, for their handicap. It's that 5 to 15 foot range where people really separate themselves within their peer group.
Yeah, no, that's good. Like, I know you're fairly regimented about your putting drills, ladder drills, and that sort of thing. I did start doing that at the beginning of the season. For me, it just, like for me, maybe it's a bad way to think, but there's, I think every green is going to have different speed. Some are going to be uphill, some are down, side hill. So to your point, like, if I can do fairly well, say outside of 20 feet and not three putt a whole bunch, like that's kind of what I'm aiming for in my putting. Like, I don't know if that's a good way to think about it, but I wanted to just move my practice to a different, like whether it's short game or on the driving range, away from putting. I don't know what your thoughts there are. I know
It's
you're very
absolutely
regimented.
correct. I mean, again, like you just don't make many putts. I'm actually looking over here at the make rates from the guys finishing first to 10th place from 15 feet make 26% of their putts. Like that's insane, obviously. But the guys missing the cut are making 20-ish percent, 18-ish percent. I mean, again, that's the best putters on the planet on the PGA Tour, and a 15-foot putt just isn't that long. Now you rewind this back to your average, 7 handicapper, and again, I hate saying it, but like just two putting from 15 feet is a good result. I would guess again, it's going to all be dependent on your handicap, but at the point that your handicap level averages two putts, every time you two putt, you're gaining against your expectation of your peer group. And that is the literal definition of improvement. If I can beat the expectation that I should be having. So, like, even though, like, okay, I want to play on the Champions Tour, and I would guess that the PJ Tour averages two putts to hole out from 32 feet. I'm going to guess the Champions Tour is in that 27, 28 foot range. Like just two putting from even 20 feet, like, yeah, it lost me a little bit against my expectation. The main thing like decade and modern golf statistics tell us is we have to start thinking of fractions of shots lost, gained and lost. And so as a concrete example of that, from 100 yards on the PGA Tour, they average in the trees, they average 3.8 shots to hole out. So they're making bogey 80% of the time. If I make a bogey on that hole, I lost zero point 0.2 shots against my expectation. The tee shot's going to lose most of that value by putting me in the trees in the first place. But so if I make a bogey, I didn't lose a shot. I lost zero point 0.2 shots. And so if I can only lose strokes fractionally, I can also only gain them back fractionally. So if I do something dumb in the trees and make double or God forbid triple, so if I make double from a spot that I should make bogey 80% of the time, I've lost 1.2 shots. Making double is not twice as bad as making bogey. It's 6 times as bad
Right.
because instead of losing zero point 0.2 shots, I've lost 1.2.
1.2.
And again, I realize that's starting to get a little bit abstract and mathy. Obviously, you as an engineer, I know you're following me along perfectly, but this really is just poker math. I mean, if you get it all in and you've got a better hand, like you technically won money on that hand, no matter what happens. Yes, you might lose money, but if we do this over millions of iterations, you're going to win money. And that's the point. It's similar to if you and I are flipping coins, and every time I win, you give me 20, and every time you win, I give you 10. It will not take you very long to figure out this is a bad bet. And that's really what we're trying to do around the golf course is make as many good bets as we possibly can. And if we just, again, run that script, I hate saying run that script because it makes it sound, again, a little bit more fancy and mathematical than it is. But if you just run that script over and over and over again, you're going to make good decisions. Last point, again, I know I meander around on these questions, but my new college director of sales is a professional poker player. And he was telling me one time that the golf course is your opponent in golf. I know that you think the people you're playing in a tournament
Yeah.
is your opponent, but it's not. The golf course is your opponent. And the golf course is always going to make optimal decisions. It's just a stagnant thing that is what it is. And so if your opponent is always making perfect decisions, you can only lose value to your opponent by making suboptimal decisions. So it really
Wow.
is about making as many optimal decisions repeatedly as physically possible. Like that's the key to golf.
That's Zen right there. Like that's next level stuff there. So yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you real quick, and it's the last question, but what are your thoughts on speed training? Like I'm kind of torn about it. Getting more distance sounds great, but I'm worried the risk of injury is going to exceed the benefits that I'm going to get. Like, what are your thoughts?
It's really, really difficult. I mean, again, like I agree. I definitely want to do speed training. My ball speed, again, I don't play much winter golf, and this is the first year. Like normally, I don't play much in the winter, and I don't really hit balls indoors for the most part. But I get my speed and my distance back within about a month. And this is the first year that it basically never came back. So let's say that I was cruising at about 170-mile-an-hour ball speed, maybe 171 in December 1st when I set the clubs down after Champions Tour Q School, and I've dropped down to like 166 or 67. Normally I would get that back pretty quick, and I just didn't this year. I do there's no doubt it helps, but it is a cost benefit analysis of hurting yourself. And every time that I try to, I tend to hurt myself a little bit. Now, I do think that as a 51-year-old, I've got more miles on me than most 51-year-olds simply because of playing high level competitive golf for nearly 40 years at this point. Um, it definitely is a good idea. People definitely probably overdo it. Well, Max Grazerman, the guy that finished, I think he had a couple runner-ups there late in the season. He's a guy I've worked with since he was in college at Duke. And he told me, because I asked him, I'm like, picked up a lot of ball speed this year. Like, what are you doing? He's like, honestly, I'm not doing any speed training. Well, I am, but what I'm doing is just at the end of my session, I'm hitting 10 drivers, no care whatsoever about contact, where it goes, as hard as I possibly can. And then I just hit 2 stock cruisers after that. He's like, I've been doing that 4-ish times a week, and that has led to gains.
Oh, wow. That's good advice
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's probably a good way to go
Yeah.
about it. Not,
This has
I do
been
believe the ripstick is the best. I think the ripstick is the best
ripstick.
training deal. The stack has a great app and everything like that, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, what's the point of the data? Like, oh, swing it and swing it faster. Like, I got it. Oh, and it's working. Again, I got it. That should show up out on the golf course. I
Yeah.
just didn't like that it's only 42 inches. So it never felt like the weighting of it never felt like a driver to me, whereas the ripstick is the actual length of a driver. So that's the one that I
Yeah.
personally use and the one that I definitely
Plus the
recommend to
stack's more
people.
expensive too, I think, because it has
Oh,
all
I'm
the
sure. Yeah.
technology. Yeah. So, Scott, this has been incredibly insightful. I really appreciate your time today. So, but before we wrap up, can you let the listeners know how they can access your amazing content?
Yeah, at this point, we finally have grown up into a real company. We've got decade.golf just up and running. In there, you'll see, endorsements from guys like Stuart Sink and Zalatoris and Bryson and Keith Mitchell and a host of other. I mean, again, I've worked with basically a third of the PGA Tour in some form or fashion at this point. And you'll see in there, it'll have a great link to go and buy the app. I hate saying it because it's my product, but I really do believe it's fantastic. Again, it's just basically a diary of all the dumb stuff I used to do, so you don't have to. We came up with the name Decade simply because Zalatoris, after he won the Texas Am, he sent me a text that said, "You've given me 25 years of experience in 5 days, and I'll never know how to thank you." And the content in the Decade app is basically just everything that I taught to Zalatoris when he was a 17-year-old kid. Again, at the time he was 3,300 in the world in the junior golf rankings. Like, he had a ton of talent, but he was not getting anything. I mean, literally not getting anything out of it. And to go and help that kid win the U.S. Junior was certainly one of the highlights of my life. So, decade.golf, you'll learn everything that Zalatoris did to make his overnight quantum leap.
Awesome. Well, very good, Scott. Thanks once again.